Today on With the First Pick, we're mixing it up and keeping it topical, talking NFL trade deadline winners and losers. We'll also rank our favorite and not so favorite 2024 draft classes. Now that we've reached the halfway point of the season, and because it's Tuesdays, there will be overreactions. But first, I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Rick Spielman. This is episode 195, 5 away, Rick, from 200. And before we get going, how many days until 2025?
Oh, no way. There are 170 days left until the 2025 NFL draft.
And 5 episodes away from 200. And by the way, the show started with you in the studio where you are today. And here we are, 195, back in the studio. Good to see you there. How was the NFL trade deadline HQ show with our buddy Pete Prisco and Kyle Long?
Yeah, a lot of opinions, a lot of disagreements as usual, but very informative. So I would suggest if you can see some of those clips to watch them, because Kyle Long actually added to the show to Mr. Negative Pete Prisco, who thinks everybody's a loser coming out of the trade deadline.
All right. Well, I know you have some strong opinions that you want to share. And look, it's a little different from the typical Tuesday show during the fall With the First Pick, but we'll get back to regularly scheduled programming. And it makes sense to talk with a general manager who's had more than 30 years of experience about trade deadline since it literally just ended. And also, I'm Ricky Spielman, so I have some experience too from my days, my Halloween days, where I was confused.
I still think you should go with the toupee, because it does make you look a lot younger than with your current look.
And as I explained to you, people treat you differently when you have a head full of hair. So I'll just leave it at that. All right, let's get to it. Let's start with some trade deadline winners and losers. And first up, sort of half joking, but half serious. Your tentacles spread far and wide throughout the NFL and college football world, Rick. You had a hand in helping the Commanders find Adam Peters, it feels like he's going to win GM of the year in year one. You know some of these college kids across the country, and I'll just start here. Grade for me on the Rick Spielman grade, and you probably end up using pluses, even though you don't usually do that. The Adam Peters, Washington Commanders trading for cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, Ohio State product. That's where I was going with that little talk there. Going from New Orleans to Washington, filling arguably their biggest need. And now that defense, Benjamin St. Juste can move to number 2. Mikey Sainristil, their second round pick, can move to slot. And that defense is going to be pretty good. So grade that pick for me. And I'm going to call him a winner, but I would imagine you feel pretty good about it too.
Yeah, and I don't give pluses on this show, but on the studio show, I actually gave an A++ to the Washington Commanders. And the reason I say that, their defense has played a lot better over the last couple of weeks. The one thing that they're missing is a shutdown corner, and they got that in Lattimore. And now Dan Quinn, with where they're at, I don't know if they would have made this move if they were 3-5 or they were the bottom half of this division and maybe not making the playoffs, but being on top of the division. The only one that's probably going to threaten them is the Philadelphia Eagles. Debo's the Eagles, but I don't know if they didn't do anything, which is surprising to me that Howard Roseman didn't pull off any kind of stunning trade before the trade deadline. But by getting a Lattimore into Dan Quinn's defense to have a shutdown corner, that's going to give Dan Quinn a lot more flexibility on how he's creating pressure. And they've, had, I believe, 6 sacks last week against the Chicago Bears. Was that wasn't them. But anyway, they have done a good job creating pressure without really any edge rushers, to say. So now you got Lattimore. That's going to free up a lot of the things that Dan Quinn can do on a defensive side of the ball to create even more and get more innovative in ways to create pressure. So A+ of them. And this isn't,
you did give a plus. Interesting.
Yeah, I did today because I was in studio. So I'm giving pluses out to everybody. And I know how hard it is on the trade deadline. But unlike Detroit, where I think Zadarius Smith, what we're going to talk about, because I thought that was an A+ move, that was short term. But I do think that this is a long term because he's under contract for 2 more years. He has a reasonable contract number. So not only did they feel a need for this year, but for future years as well.
And the other thing, in case you're curious, if you're listening or watching, we're actually going live because it's that big a deal. The Commanders sent a 3rd-round draft pick in 2025, 25 4th-rounder, and a 25 6th-rounder. And the Saints sent Washington's way, Marshawn, of course, and then the 2025 5th-round pick. And someone on Twitter noted this. Adam Peters turned Jahan Dotson and 2 day 3 picks into Marshawn Lattimore and a day 3 pick. And Jahan Dotson was, of course, traded to Debo's Eagles. And I haven't watched closely, but I don't think he's done a bunch there. But that's another home run pick, especially in the ensuing months that followed, where all these wide receivers are getting traded not for third-round picks, but for fourth, fifth, sixth-round picks.
Yeah, no, again, Adam Peters did a great job addressing a need. Dan Quinn, I'm sure, was in his office for the last 3 weeks saying, listen, we're right in the thick of this thing. And if we can get a shutdown corner and go talk to the New Orleans Saints, because New Orleans is in sell mode right now, and they have to start unloading some of this cap. Now, I don't know if the Commanders took any of the salary on or not, but by trading him, he's still going to have a lot of acceleration into an already horrible cap situation with the New Orleans Saints. But that tells you where New Orleans is right now. They fired Dennis Allen, this past week. So they're going to go in total rebuild mode. And Washington took advantage of that by getting Lattimore.
I don't have the numbers in front of me from year to year, but it feels like the trade deadline activity has ramped up in recent years, and this year felt like more than usual. But again, I have to go back and look. But we even had some activity last week with the D-Hop trade, and we've talked about that. Josh Uche was traded too. But what are you doing as a GM the last 48 hours? I mean, you got a game to worry about on Sunday or Monday, but you're also having to juggle the phone calls and figure things out. Let's say your team is 500 or one game above 500, and you need an edge rusher. How are you more into buying or selling to that point?
No, this all happened 2 or 3 weeks. It doesn't happen just today.
Okay.
So these conversations have been going on a long time. And just so you know, a general manager is not game planning or has anything to do with what's going on Sunday. So I've been in a booth. Except for injuries. But I've been in a booth and we've taken phone calls during games at times, just because you don't know when you're going to get one of those phone calls. Let's say you were interested in trading with a team that played on Thursday night, or, you're playing on Monday night. There's a lot of calls going on during the day before the trade deadline. So these conversations are going on last couple of weeks. And no, you're going to know whether there's a potential way to strike a deal or not strike a deal. And so today, since the deadline came up, you've seen a lot of trades. I think why you're seeing more trade activity than you have in the past is because a trade deadline moved to a later date. That's and by moving to a later date, you know where your roster is right now, if you have a legitimate chance or not a legitimate chance to get into the playoffs. And the teams that have a legitimate chance are just on the outside looking in, maybe a player away. Maybe the only time you can say that for an NFL team, we're only one player away, just like Lattimore may be that only player for the Washington Commanders to get them over the hump. We saw a couple years ago when the Rams went and traded for
Von.
Von Miller, and they brought in OBJ that got them over the hump and actually won them a Super Bowl. So there is this time of year where you can actually say, you never say that during the offseason. No one knows they're one player away. You try to add as many players as possible. But this trade deadline, it looks like teams felt that there was only a player away. And I think it's been great for the league, because when I was serving as a co-chair on the general managers committee, one of the things that we really pushed at the time, and we took it to the competition committee that got voted through, is to move the trade deadline to a later date, because you can make a lot more moves that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, if it happens in the middle of October, you don't know what you don't know.
No one knows.
Right. And the Cooper Kupp trade that we talked about 2 weeks ago, that's before they won 2 of 3. And the Rams changed their mind on Cooper Kupp. And that's why. All right, I'm going to lead you off with one of my losers. I'm typically the ray of sunshine of this show, so I'm going to put on a different hat, put on my Rick Spielman hat, and be Grumpy Grouch here. And you tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the primetime loser and 1 being not so much a loser, what you think of this. I think the Las Vegas Raiders are huge losers because they didn't inquire about any of the quarterbacks, whether it's Bryce. There's a report that Anthony Richardson, teams were sniffing around Anthony Richardson after he got benched, and I don't know. I don't think the Colts have given up on him, but who knows? Joe Flacco certainly didn't play well. But Bryce Young, you would imagine, would be out there for the getting for a day 3 pick. And they didn't sniff around anything. And it's not working. They fired the OC and some other guys along in the offensive coaching staff.
The quarterback coach. They fired the offensive line coach. They brought in Norv Turner, I saw today, to come in as
to team up with his son, Scott.
Yeah, Scott, I think, is going to be the play caller, the offensive coordinator with his dad. I don't know how they're going to work that out, but I've seen offensive coordinators replaced. I was involved in one when Zim decided to replace John DeFilippo, but we had Kevin Stefanski and Pat Shermer on the staff that actually stepped up and did a good job. But I've never seen almost the entire offensive side of the ball coaching staff get fired. So I don't know how you replace all those guys, especially the offensive line coach. I mean, that is the hardest position to fill, even during the offseason when you're putting a staff together. So you let your guy go. I don't know who the assistant is, to be honest with you, and if they believe he's ready to step up and take that lead role. But to make that type of move and to know what your situation is with your roster, and especially your quarterback situation, I was surprised. Maybe I agree with you that they didn't make a move for a quarterback, or maybe they don't think Bryce Young is a guy. Maybe they think they're going to have a losing record to only get one of the two quarterbacks I think are worthy of the first round right now. And maybe they don't even get them, but they have to get this quarterback issued resolved, and they didn't do it today.
Hey, let me ask you this. Last year, a lot of the players came to the defense of Antonio Pierce that wanted him to be the head coach. And Mark Davis had made some questionable decisions in the past about the coaching situation there. He fired some guys under some weird circumstances. We know what happened with John Gruden. Jack Del Rio actually was winning games, and they fired him for John Gruden. But should maybe you not listen to the players when it comes to what's in their best interest, because maybe they don't know best? I'm just trying to figure out, because it feels like Antonio Pierce is on thin ice already.
Yeah, and I don't know, but now Tom Brady's taken over, so it's part of the co-ownership. So
right.
He may have a bigger influence on what's going to go on with the Las Vegas Raiders going forward than we know about. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I'm sure at the end of the season, everybody will be evaluated, including the head coach. Tom Telesco just got there as a general manager, so I imagine his job is safe. But it'll be interesting to see what an influence, or how big an influence Tom Brady has on Mark Davis.
Well, let me ask it to you this way. How much player input did you take when you guys were making decisions?
We listened to them, but they don't know. They know what the coach is, and they know they like playing for the guy, but they may not know all the other issues that are behind the scenes that players would not be privy to. So you can listen to their opinion. It sounds like Antonio Pierce has the respect of the players, which is critical, but there's a lot of other things that go into that decision-making besides just what the players say, because they don't have all the information an owner or a general manager has.
Okay. Would you agree that the Vegas Raiders, in the context of this conversation about trade deadline, is a loser?
I would say, but I don't know. Like I said, all the changes, they're in a bye week right now. They're probably losers from the beginning of the season, the way they've been playing this year. So
I thought you were going to take the political way out, and you just said nope. You said,
yeah, I don't know. So I would say yes, loser.
Thank you. As we sit here, day of our Lord, November 5th, the Vegas Raiders currently have the 6th overall pick. So they'll probably get a quarterback there if they want it. The question is the quarterback going to be good enough to do what they want to do? All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about a couple more of these winners and losers right after this.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, Rick, let's talk about America's team. The Detroit Lions went out and got Zadarius Smith. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Zadarius Smith, so I went and watched a little bit of his snaps. They play him out wide, and he will bull rush you right into the quarterback's lap consistently. And he's a one-trick pony in that sense. You're not bringing him in to stop the run. You're bringing him in to collapse the pocket. I looked up, he had 309 snaps.
Not so fast there. Do not discount his ability to play the run.
All right, let me give you the stats, and then you can talk him up on both sides as both a run stuffer and a pass rusher. 309 snaps so far. That's 55th among edge rushers and outside linebackers. But he has 27 pressures, which ranks 22nd. And he's got a little juice to him. But make the case. He can be on the field for 3 downs, I suppose.
This gives them, they had to do something to get another edge rusher. And Zadarius Smith is a short-term answer. It was a shame they lost Aiden Hutchinson, but this was the best option, in my opinion. I thought maybe the Giants would move Ojulari, but they didn't. He's too young of a player. O'Shea, who you talked about that was moved, I don't think fit the scheme. Not only can Za'Darius hold the point against the run, he's not just a two-gap defensive lineman, but he can get off blocks and make plays in the run game. But he's also going to be able to give them some edge rush for the Detroit Lions that they're missing right now. Now, I give a lot of credit to Aaron Glenn because he's been able to manufacture pressure with a couple of no-name guys that are there right now. Houston has never been what he was his rookie year. Muhammad, who came up the last 2 weeks off a practice squad, but you can only do the smoke and mirrors thing for so long. So for them to get aggressive to go out and get Za'Darius Smith, I thought was an excellent move and gives them even a better chance to potentially get to the Super Bowl this year.
And if you're looking for trade details, Detroit sent the 2025 fifth-round draft pick and a 2026 sixth-rounder to Cleveland, and the Browns sent Za'Darius and a 26 seventh-rounder to Detroit. And Za'Darius had been mentioned in trade talks for weeks now, so that's not a surprise, just a landing spot. And Detroit had been mentioned as a landing spot, and I think you mentioned on this very podcast here. Another winner for me, and this is one of the funniest pictures from the weekend, is Brian Branch giving the double birds to the Packers on his way off the field. I don't think he should have been kicked out of the game. Do you think he should have been kicked out for that?
That's I didn't think so, especially in such a big game like that. Now I can understand him getting, it was a penalty and him getting a significant fine. But for that to come from New York, not on the field or not from the replay assist, that comes directly from New York, I didn't think was fair. A lot of times, and I've dealt with this before, if guys are multiple offenders and lead with their head, they may have a target on their back, especially when the league's watching from New York. I don't know how many times he's been fined for hits or no hits, but if he was on their watch list and he did it again, I could see why they probably threw him out, although that is a bold move in such an important game. But that gives you credit to Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, that they still were able to overcome and beat the Green Bay. As Pete says, it's not Green Bay weather. I know it's Green Bay weather when it's 44 and slushy rain and coming down in buckets like they did. Detroit just showed they can win many different ways. That was the first time they have played outdoors, and they answered that bell. So kudos to them. Kudos for the adjustments they made when Branch was thrown out, but I thought it was unfair that he got thrown out of the game.
Are you throwing a veggie plate in the working suite when that happens?
Oh, yeah. Veggie plate, computer, phone, everything.
You're fired up if you're in the working suite.
I would have been very, very fired up. Yes.
You know how I know the Lions have never played outdoors? Because Aaron Glenn didn't have the windshield wipers on his glasses. Those things were all sort of fogged up. So tell Chris to get him some windshield wipers so he can see imagine what kind of game he would have called to see.
Yeah, he called a heck of a game without windshield wipers. I don't know if I would change that.
That's true. All right, I'm going to give you another loser, unless you have some that you want to.
I've got a loser too.
Go ahead.
Okay, I am going to go kind of a winner, Carolina Panthers, for getting a fourth rounder from Dallas for Mingo, which I thought, because Mingo hasn't done anything.
We talked about him every week last year.
But I'm going to go loser for Bryce Young because they traded away all the receivers. Now if you look at their receivers, they have 3 left on the roster. Now I know Adam Thielen is still on injured reserve, but Leggett, who's a rookie, who looks like he's going to be the real deal. Coker, who was a college free agent that I didn't even know who he was, but he's actually playing halfway decent for him. And then David Moore, who they signed out of Tampa. So you telling me that Bryce Young, who's actually played maybe his best game last week when they beat the New Orleans Saints, now you're taking away more players away from him? What chance are you giving this kid? So I'm going to say Bryce Young was a loser out of this trade.
Yeah. Thank you for beating the Saints. You got the coach fired, and to reward you, we're going to give away all your players. Jatavian Sanders has been doing some things. Jonathan Brooks is going to come back. But at the end of the day, this ain't a situation where you
had a great year that no one talks about. I thought Dallas should have made a move for him or even Khalil in Chicago. Herbert.
Let me give you this loser. The Dallas Cowboys are losers for that very reason.
I understand why they may have went with a receiver. I don't understand what they saw in Mingo. They probably went back to their college scouting reports because what he ran and how he plays, or at least how he looked like in the NFL, those speeds don't go together.
Right.
He's had drop passes as a rookie. I don't think he's a great route runner. But I thought if Dallas, especially if Dak Prescott is going on IR for the hamstring injury, and you got to play Cooper Rush as your starting quarterback, you didn't help him at all. And Zeke Elliott and Dowdell and even Dalvin Cook, who they've been elevating the last couple of weeks off practice squad, don't give Cooper Rush, in my opinion, a chance to have success. When he came in and he was 5-1 as a starter before, when Dak went down on IR, they had Zeke Elliott, who was rolling at the time, and Tony Pollard. That's a pretty good 1-2 combination at running back to run the football effectively, to set up everything Cooper Rush does. Cooper Rush isn't Dak Prescott. He is a solid backup, but you need to have a running game. They don't have a running game, probably because of the issues up front on the offensive line, but they don't have any backs. So I agree with you. They were a loser because they didn't address the running back need, and they had an opportunity to, cheaper probably than they got Mingo.
Let me ask you a question, and you can choose not to answer it if you want to do that. But is it possible to have no football background and to own a football team and to be a competent general manager?
I don't know. He won a Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, you can go back to the Jim Johnson. So
thank you.
Yeah, well, the Herschel Walker trade helped set that team up for success. And
I'm just saying, it feels like he's not helping the team.
I know. I can't say that because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Okay. But
I do know that they've had Mike Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. They've had some good drafts.
That's true.
And so I'm not going to say that it's a total disaster, but right now, with an all-in theory on what the owner / general manager has said at the beginning of the offseason last year, they're all in on getting, it looks like, Mike McCarthy out.
And that's the other thing. I mean, there have been reports, I have no idea, that he's frustrated with how things have gone at times. And maybe every coach is frustrated. I get it. But just feels like
he didn't even know that they traded for Trey Lance for a 4th-round pick. He just showed up at the office, from what I heard, with hey, here's your new quarterback.
I mean, how do you operate in this? That's the point. All right. So let's end on a more positive note. So I'm looking through all these trades here. Tell me, I'm going to read out the trade, and you tell me if it's a win or a loss, because I think it's a, where I'll come down on this one. Steelers get Preston Smith, edge rusher from the Packers, and Mike Williams, pass catcher from the Jets, and all it cost them was a 5th-round pick and a 7th-round pick.
That's a winner chicken dinner for me, for the Steelers. It gives Russell Wilson another deep field or another threat down the field, even though Mike Williams is still coming off an ACL. That chemistry didn't work with the New York Jets. I think with Pickens and Williams to vertically stretch the field, and as Pete likes to say, he's been saying it all day, Russell Wilson may be the best moon ball thrower there is in the NFL. To go up and get 50-50 balls, I think this was a great move, and Omar Khan deserves a lot of credit, as Mike Tomlin does. They're sitting on top of the division. Now, they haven't played a division opponent yet. They're coming out of a bye. They have to go to the Washington Commanders, and then they have all the division games coming down a stretch. So they put themselves in position to be first place right now in the AFC North, and they made some moves to hopefully keep them where they're at.
What do you think about and this happened before today, but it did happen recently. The guy you drafted, Christian Darrisaw, signed the big money deal, unfortunately tore his ACL. They got Cam Robinson, the Vikings did, from the Jaguars. Is that Band-Aid going to hold up, or how do you feel about that deal?
Well, I don't know what was going on down in Jacksonville. It sounded like Walker Little was going to take over as a starting left tackle. There's been some rumors out there that he kind of quit on the team. So They were probably just trying to unload him anyway. But I thought it was a great move because you can't even find left tackles during the offseason. So to get someone that's at least a starter that lined up, that's probably a better pass protector than he is run blocker, but at least can get out there and function as a left tackle in this league and has looked pretty good at some points of his career. That gives him a chance to have a chance, because I don't know if there's any other options out there. I was surprised, and Pete brought this up during our shows today, that maybe Kansas City didn't try to make a move for Cam Robinson with the way Wani Morris has struggled at left tackle.
And Kingsley Sumataya, who we talked about early on in the season, who they drafted in the second round out of BYU, who had to start because Morse was hurt early on, and then he went to the bench. There's also conversations that the Chiefs might have been sniffing around Marshawn Lattimore as well, so they lost out on that. They got Uche, they got D-Hop. D-Hop made a big impression in the game last night, so clearly that's working. And how about Patrick Mahomes not scared the crap out of everybody when he turns his ankle? Just walk off the field. I mean, I was like, oh my God, he tore his ACL and his kneecap came off. And then 5 minutes later, he's playing.
Yeah. And I don't know if that had anything to do. I don't know when we get into over-Rick actions, but Todd Bowles and his decision to take it into overtime instead of go for two, because maybe he thought that Patrick Mahomes' ankle was worse than it was. But the worst thing you could ever do is lose the coin toss in overtime and give Patrick Mahomes, because I believe he's 8-0 in the regular season when it comes to overtime games. That was the worst situation that could possibly happen, giving it to them to start the overtime and give the ball to Patrick Mahomes.
And you saw it on Baker Mayfield's face. He called tails never fails. Heads came up, and he put his head back. All right, here we go. I know how this is going to end. I'll go ahead and take my equipment off. And that's exactly what happened. All right, a couple more here. I said, I agree, Bryce Young's a loser, but I think the Panthers are winners for the looking ahead. New general manager, Dan Campbell, got rid of Jonathan Mingo, got a 4th-round pick for that, which feels like a good deal from Carolina's perspective. They moved off Deontay Johnson, and they got something in return for him. He's in the final year of his deal. So they get some draft picks. I think the Ravens are winners well in the Deontay Johnson part of it. So do you agree, Ravens winner and Carolina winner for the compensation?
Yeah, I thought Ravens were one of my biggest winners, because to add Deontay Johnson, who to me I think is an excellent route runner.
Quickly, let me tell you, they got Trey White as well. They traded for cornerback Trey White from the Rams.
Yeah, and he's a shell of himself after the Achilles and after the ACL, but for flipping sevenths or whatever they did, it's a no-brainer to at least go out there, and at least it gives you a veteran, and maybe he helps, maybe he doesn't. What do you have to lose? But I think to add Deontay Johnson to what is already a very explosive offense, not only with King Henry in the backfield, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Andrews, they have just weapons all over the place. And Bateman's played a lot better too recently as well. So to add Deontay Johnson to this mix, I think is a great move and a power move by the Baltimore Ravens, that they don't want to just win the division or go to the AFC Championship. I think they're done with that. They made this move to try to get them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when you add good players in a wide receiver room, it takes the pressure off the number 3 guy, in this case, Rashad Bateman, who can do the number 3 guy sort of things. And we're sort of seeing that. Debo, we're going to take a break. We're going to get right into over-Rick actions.
Let's break.
All right, take a quick break, and then we'll come back for another exciting episode of over-Rick actions right after this.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
All right, Rick, so another exciting edition of Over Rick Actions. Premise is pretty simple. I have a couple questions from the NFL weekend for Rick. Doesn't know what they are. He answers them in real time, and you brought it up, so I'm going to follow up on it. You're pretty conservative in terms of how you view the game. You and Pete share this. I don't know what Pete thinks about this, but if you're in the working suite and you're in Kansas City and you are the ultra-conservative Todd Bowles, does the GM, Rick Spielman, want him to go for 2 in that situation with 20-something seconds to go in the fourth quarter?
I don't know all the situation, but just watching from the couch, you think that if you're in Kansas City and you have an opportunity not to win the coin flip and give Patrick Mahomes the ball like we talked about earlier, and have an opportunity to go for 2. Now, if you looked at it, I mean, Cade Otton has done a phenomenal job filling in for the holes that they have on their roster right now at the receiver position. But when they converted on that, right at the end of the game, that player, was it Moore or whoever was?
It was the backup guy, number 81. I can't remember who it is.
Yeah. Well, he was wide open. So I'm sure Liam Cohn had a couple of plays that they had for 2-point conversion. So For me, what do you have to lose? You're on the road. You're on prime time. It's Monday night. It's raining. I understand you drove the ball down the field at the end of the game to tie the game up, but I would have wanted them to go for 2. So if you lost, at least you went down swinging.
Yeah.
This way, they lost and they didn't have a chance to go down swinging because they gave Patrick Mahomes the ball and he took it down for a walk-off touchdown to Kareem Hunt.
Is Rick Spielman working sweet GM, giving any consideration in that moment to understanding that you're 4-4 and that you've already lost twice to the Falcons in your division?
Yeah, I think you just got to go for the win, especially in Kansas City. But I'm sure, you're talking today on, what the decision was. I'm sure the ownership wants to know what the decision was. And Todd Bowles, who I think is a very good head coach. I really do. I have the utmost respect for Todd Bowles. But go for the win, because what do you have to lose except the game?
Which you lost anyway.
Yeah, and you had a chance to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs on national TV, prime time, in their stadium.
Was there. Everything.
Yeah, go for 2.
All right. Let's have this is going to be a weekly segment, I feel like. Let's see what's up with Tyreek Stevenson. We talked about him last week because he was dancing and goofing off, and then they lost the game. This week, Wednesday's practice, he found out he was being benched for the first series, the first quarter, whatever it was, and he took himself out of practice. Then they went on, the Bears did collectively to lay an egg. No-showed against the Cardinals. The offense looked atrocious. Caleb was running for his life, yada, yada, yada. People are angry at Matt Eberflus, head coach. GM Rick, what are you doing when you're sitting there at practice and you see Tyreek basically do the Anthony Richardson tap out to take himself out once he figures he's not playing? Yeah,
well, I don't know if they told him he was going to not play or just, hey, you're going to sit out the first series, but you have to mature. He's got to mature when things happen and adversity hits, and it sounds like he's immature with everything that's coming his way. I don't know if I would have sat him if it was just a learning lesson, and just say, hey, you can't do this. He came out and apologized. He did everything the right way. So I can maybe look at it from the player side and say, I did everything. I admitted I made a mistake. I screwed up. I'm sorry, but you're still benching me. Well, that's BS. Yeah. But I don't know what was explained to him. But I could see it from the player side, how he would be frustrated. But I also know that you have to be mature, and maybe you don't agree with the decision, just like your kids. They may not agree with the discipline you're giving them, but move forward. And I don't know. I didn't go back and see how he played once they inserted him, but
he ain't why they lost, I'll tell you that.
No, and the whole Chicago Bears team just looked flat against the Arizona Cardinals.
DJ Moore, the wide receiver, was asked after the game on a radio spot, I believe, had Matt Eberflus lost the locker room. He says, I don't want to say that. I don't want to go that far, something to that effect. Again, if you're the GM and you hear that ain't exactly a ringing endorsement.
No, and that's what you're monitoring, whether this is the right guy to go forward with in the future. Now, hopefully they can turn it around. I'm not a big Shane Waldron fan as an offensive coordinator, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I think they have too much talent. And you see what Cliff Kingsbury did for the Commanders. And if you would have said on paper at the beginning of the season, well, the weapons around Caleb Williams is a lot better than the weapons that right now that Jaden Daniels is going in. But it seems like Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels have clicked, and Cliff Kingsbury is doing an outstanding job, where I wouldn't be surprised after the season if he gets some head coaching interviews and opportunities just because of what he's been able to do. But I just think the Bears are almost, with the way their defense is played, take away the Hail Mary or the Fail Mary, as some people are saying out there now. And then they came out flat last week. That when you hear that in the front office as a head coach starting to lose that locker room, that's when you have to start making some evaluating and making some tough decisions. Now, I wouldn't fire Matt Eberflus during the season because they're still in this race. Even though it looks like Detroit is, at least right now, the best team in the division, but you're still in it and you can still get into a wild card spot. So they better figure out real quick how to turn this around, because laying an egg in DC and now laying an egg out in Arizona is not a good sign.
No, a great sign for Arizona, who's
how about them?
Yeah, and they made a trade. Who'd they trade for? They traded for an edge rusher. They got Baron Browning.
Yeah,
So
Baron Browning and I thought that was a good trade on both sides because Arizona doesn't have really a true edge rusher. Collins has moved some, but I don't know if teams are going to game plan against Xavier Collins moving off, outside edge. Darius Robinson, hopefully he's coming back from injury, but he's not a true edge rusher. I think he's more of a 5 technique inside pass rusher. But to add a Browning, who Denver made a decision to extend Cooper over Browning, and Browning can rush the passer. The issue with Browning is he's never healthy. He's always had durability concerns, but when he's healthy and on the field, he can definitely help Arizona because that's where they're lacking right now. And kudos to Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing, their defensive coordinator. Both of them I worked with in Minnesota, along with Nick Rollis, who's a defensive coordinator. Drew Petzing's the offensive coordinator. But Jonathan Gannon has that team playing probably above what everybody thought they were going to be able to play at.
Absolutely. As I'm looking at my preseason rankings here, I had Arizona 3rd in the division, but what do I know? All right. Another sort of young player that we're trying to figure out what's going on. This young man from, I think you spoke with him, Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, drafted by the Bengals. He had top 45, top 50 talent, just some maturity issues. He no-showed for the walkthrough on Saturday. They had every intention of having him involved in the game plan, it sounds like, and then they stuck him on the bench. And there's the video of Joe Burrow showing frustration towards him or something on the bench together. He was in his civvies, of course. I'm just trying to figure out, how do you get through to a young, immature player? Mike Hilton says you got to grow up. This ain't Little League. You got to take responsibility as a grown man. How do you get through to someone who's this talented and maybe hasn't had to work hard because of the talent and get through to them and explain to them how, real life works?
Hopefully some of them vets in that locker room can get to him to make him understand what it's like to be a pro's pro, because it's no joke when you get to the NFL. The other thing that is a no-no for not showing up at a walkthrough on Saturday. That's a significant fine. The only way you can't make him go out there and run gassers till he, drops.
Is that the CEA?
No, but you can take away his money. And that usually when you're taking away players' money, and guys that are competitors want to play. And if you take away and make him inactive, take away his money, hopefully the message comes to him. There's no question about Burton's ability, because we've seen that at Alabama. I saw it when he transferred from Georgia to Alabama, and he really had a very good year at Alabama last year before he came out, because it looked like he got faster. He was a vertical threat down the field. He has all the physical tools, but where guys end up failing, and all of a sudden 2 or 3 years from now, he may be out of the league if he doesn't figure out what it takes to be a true pro's pro.
Yeah, and that's what's so frustrating, because you see the talent and then just the stuff you could avoid gets in the way, and you're not making good decisions. I get it. When you're 21, 22, it's easy to make bad decisions, but this is, you're not making minimum wage out of college. This is the real stuff here. And finally, you mentioned Dennis Allen getting fired. The kiss of death is losing to the Panthers and losing to the Bryce Young Panthers, apparently. And then Luke Getsy got fired as well. I'll start here. I think Dennis Allen did some good things, and I think defensively he's a really good defensive coordinator. The Luke Getsy thing, what frustrated me about that, and I say this all the time, when you're a fan or a media member and something's going to be a terrible idea and you do it anyway, and I'm talking about Luke Getsy, he did Justin Fields no favors. I had a lot of questions about what they were doing up there in Chicago, and then you bring him to Las Vegas where you don't even have a quarterback and the offensive line issues. My question to you, Rick, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, what just happened?
All right, fair enough.
That's not an over Rick action. That's over reality action.
Yeah.
So he wasn't successful in Chicago, wasn't successful in Justin Fields. You can say that they were in rebuild mode, or Justin Fields is not good enough to be a starting quarterback in the league. And What if they had an opportunity to get Justin Fields out in Vegas and Getsy put the kibosh on it and you went with Minshew instead? So he had his he came from Green Bay to Chicago, got his opportunity to be an OC. That didn't work out. Got another opportunity. That didn't work out. So I don't know if he'll get another chance to be an offensive coordinator, but the Las Vegas Raiders offense is atrocious. I've seen some bad offenses, but it's non-functional in what they're doing right now.
And where would they be without Brock Bowers?
Yeah, I know. Brock Bowers is going to be the first one since Looney from 1940 to lead the NFL as a tight end.
Looney.
Yeah. So, it's just a disaster there. And like I said, what we talked about earlier in the podcast, you just got rid of your whole offensive staff, basically. So I don't know what's going to get better. It may even get worse because they can't run the ball. They have offensive line issues. They have one playmaker left on the offensive side of the ball. They have no quarterback. Now, you think Desmond Ridder is going to come in after they brought him off, I think, Arizona's practice squad? And
he may have been at home.
No, I think he was on a practice squad.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So he's not going to be the answer because it sounds like he's going to be the starter when they come back out of this bye. And that kid been there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So this is just a total disaster, and I think it's only going to get worse from here.
And we talk about it a lot. Tom Telesco doesn't have a history of trading up. So if they want one of these quarterbacks, he may have to change his tune as well, depending on where they end up. But I don't think they're going to win 8 or 9 games. So maybe they're exactly where they want to be if they're in the Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders business.
They should have traded Crosby to Detroit. That would have been an A++++. Can you imagine down the road if you had Max Crosby and Aiden Hutchinson coming off the edges?
I want 2 first-round picks. Are you going to do that as the Raiders?
I can't remember what I gave up for Jared Allen. I gave up a pretty significant amount. That was during the offseason, but Jared Allen ended up being a pretty good player for us. Worth every penny, I thought.
I think I would love to have seen that or Myles Garrett, but I didn't. You mentioned earlier you didn't like giving up all that compensation, but
for a unique player, you have to make. I mean, that's something you may consider.
Yeah,
but it sounded like they weren't. Mark Davis wasn't going to trade him no matter what, unless you did something.
Brad Holmes on the phone. Brad Holmes said he doesn't need your advice. Thanks, Brad.
All right, podcast by next year.
Yeah, you got to. Don't be too successful, Brad. Bring it back a little bit. You'll be on this show full time. Debo, want another break? Or want to go right to the draft classes?
One more break. Let's make some money.
Got to make some money. Rick's got to pay for those hair weaves. When we come back, we'll talk about the draft classes we liked and even a couple we didn't like so far through 9 weeks after this.
At CBS Sports Galazzo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Wow.
And all day long!
24/7.
All right, Rick, let's talk about some of these draft classes. We're 9 weeks into the season, and I'll refer to my notes. And by that, I mean the story I wrote on CBSSports.com right after the draft, May 1st, when I ranked the draft classes. We'll see how wrong I was. I'll let you go first. Give me a draft class that you like and think that have done some pretty important things through 9 games to help their team.
And I'm not going to be biased towards the Commanders or towards Detroit Lions. So I'm going to go with guys that I thought really did a great job. I'm going to start out in San Francisco with John Lynch. I know that they, whiffed on Trey Lance. No one's ever going to be perfect, but they recovered with Brock Purdy. But if you look at their draft class, Ricky Pearsall probably would have been more of a contributor if he didn't get, went through that unforeseen issue getting shot
in the chest.
In the chest down. But he's come back and starting to play now. So hopefully he gets his sea legs, as they say, underneath him, which I think he will. But you look at Ronaldo Green and what he's done. You look at Pooney starting at right guard since day one. Mustafa, who we talked about on one of our previous shows, and what an impact he's made since he's gotten some play time. And then keep going down. Gerardo, the running back from Louisville, and what a job he has done. So they have done a great job filling in needs. And I think if you start seeing hitting in the third round, the fourth round, guys that are making an impact for them on our already very talented football team.
Yeah, I'm looking back at what I wrote on May 1st. My favorite pick was Ricky Pearsall, which I said could also qualify as most surprising pick. You had him as a first rounder. I wasn't sure if he'd go that high, but he certainly did. We thought at the time that it was sort of insurance against Brandon Ayuk leaving or not resigning. It is insurance against Brandon Ayuk, who did resign, but towards ACL, unfortunately. The best value, I said, was Dominic Puny, who we talked about last year, who played tackle in college, but kicked inside and is doing a great job. My most surprising pick was Mustafa, because I thought he was a day 3 guy. I didn't like him last year. We talked about him a few weeks ago. He's playing well above that, and just once again proves that I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes, but he's a thumper.
His wasn't so much. I think there was some off-field concerns more than there was what he does on the field. Some maturity issues.
Granted, but I will own it. I didn't think he was great in center field, and he's done a really good job in center field from what I've seen based on what he was doing at Wake. So credit to him. My bad, Malik. I own that. All right, I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit because that's how I roll. One of my favorite draft classes, and this was my second overall draft class when I wrote this back on May 1st. Number 1 with the Bears. I got to change that. The Washington Commanders gave me A+. And
ahead of the Steelers?
The Steelers were in there, but I had to act like I didn't love them as much as I did. Jaden Daniels, grand slam. Johnny Newton was coming off the foot injury. He's starting to play a little bit. Mikey Sanders still, we just mentioned, he's going to get to move back inside where he's most comfortable at nickel. Ben Sinnott hasn't done quite as much at tight end as we thought he would do, but Brandon Coleman's done more. The left tackle out of TCU, he's been injured some, but he was a third-round pick and then had an opportunity to win the job. He did win the job against Cornelius Lucas, and he was doing pretty well. So when he's healthy, he's a fun addition as a rookie. And then Luke McCaffrey, who you were a big fan of, Christian's brother, who was drafted at the end of third round as a wide receiver, has done some things as well. And you couple that with what they just did to get Marshawn Lattimore, I don't know how you can't love what the Washington Commanders have done through 9 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and Sennett, I mean, because of Ertz and the way he's been playing, hasn't been getting many balls his way, but he does have a pretty significant role because I just going back and looking at some tape, he does do an excellent job as a blocker. And I think that he's part of the key why they've been able to run the ball so well. That's
a great point. And he talked to us about blocking being want to when we talked about the combine. He got plenty of practice against some of the dudes he faced in the Big 12. He talked about Will McDonald IV, who's having a fantastic year too. I should take that moment to briefly apologize to Will McDonald and the Jets because I was laughing because the Steelers traded up to get Broderick Jones and forced, quote unquote, the Jets to take an edge rusher instead of a tackle. They got the right dude. So, Will McDonald, I salute you, sir. All right. Who else you got as a favorite draft class through 9 weeks?
I know they're not having a great season, and I know they get a lot of heat there because of Daniel Jones, but I'm going to go with the New York Giants. Everyone they pick this year, most of the rookies are all contributing. You look at Neighbors, who, if it wasn't for Jaden Daniels, probably be mentioned as offensive rookie of the year. Tyler Nubin, the safety from Minnesota, has been a starter day one. Smart, steady player. Phillips, the Nick corner, is a tough, aggressive guy that's also had his little bit of up and downs, but he's starting at Nick for him. Theo Johnson, your guy, actually has made some plays in the passing game.
Tight end 3.
And then Tyrone Tracy, another one of your faves coming out of Purdue, has really gave them a speed back and a guy that can make explosive plays. So I thought that all 5 of their picks that I just mentioned here has had a significant impact on that roster this year. Even though the record doesn't reflect it yet, I think it's going to reflect it in the future.
Even the linebacker out of UCLA has gotten some run too. Their 6th-round pick. And I got to be honest, I like Tyrone Tracy, the converted wide receiver from Purdue, but our buddy Shrine Bowl director Eric Galco was a huge Tyrone Tracy guy, and he said, I've said it before, during his he was on with the bowl predictions preseason. He said Tyrone Tracy was going to lead all rookies in rushing, and that's looking pretty prescient right now. He's special. He ran all over the Steelers, and it's interesting. Let me ask you what you think about this, especially for a day 3 guy. Devin Singletary is also in the backfield. Same blocking scheme, same holes, and Tyrone Tracy just looks different when he gets the ball. How does that work? I mean, it ain't Adrian Peterson different, but he's a special player.
It's called speed, and speed shows up when he gets through the hole and gets to the second level because he can outrun pursuit angles of the defenders on the back end. And that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, the Steelers can attest to that. I was like, good Lord, stop that guy. Almost made Daniel Jones look good. All right. Next team up for me, whose draft has been an absolute home run through the first 2 months of the season, even though one of their first-round picks, you just talked about, Darius Robinson, hasn't really played because he's been banged up, so we'll get him back. I'm talking about the Arizona Cardinals. I gave them an A+ as well right after the draft for their draft. Started with Marvin Harrison Jr., who's been good. I wouldn't say great. I think he's been good.
He's coming. I'm telling you, last couple of weeks, he's coming.
He's coming. Darius Robinson, I mentioned, who I think has a chance to be really good once he gets healthy. Max Melton, the cornerback. We talked about a lot about him in the pre-draft process. Trey Benson, the running back, is getting some run. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson had a pick earlier in the year. Xavier Thomas made a play over the weekend, roughing up the Bears and their situation there with Caleb Williams. So I'm still high on what they're doing, and I think a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff that you talked about. Monty Ossenford is not afraid to make phone calls, move up and down the draft board, and more importantly, pick the right guys. And you've said it plenty of times, but this team is sneaky good, and I think they're not getting the credit they deserve, but right now they're in first place.
And the other thing, too, is it helps a lot that Kyler Murray's probably playing to his pre-surgery form. Yes. I think he's finally over that ACL. He understands what they're trying to do from an offensive scheme standpoint, and I think they're going to continue to rise. And if you would have said this at the beginning of the season, that they would be the division leaders in the NFC West, I could have sold you some sand on the beach down in Sanibel Island. But a great job by them. And again, I give a credit to Kyler Murray, who seems to had some maturity issues early in his career, seems to come around and understand what it's like to be a pro quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was the previous GM that was the problem with the contract for playing video games. I don't know, but he's certainly, there's been no sense that he's not locked in and doing what he's being asked to do. Do you have another pop, if you will?
No, those were the two pops.
Let me give you one more real quick then before you give me a drop, because I wrote this down, even though I was only supposed to do two, but I'll give him a shout out because I know you will never admit that you were wrong about Kobe Turner. The Rams, of course. Jared Verse.
That's a low-hanging fruit. I love Verse. I love Fisk. So, yeah, those two are making a major impact. And
you know who else is, though? Had a pick six last weekend? Cam Curl. Cam Kitchens, excuse me.
Kitchens from Miami. Yep.
Because here's the thing. We talked to him at the Combine. He ran in the 4.6s, so we were a little concerned about that. We both liked his tape. But when we talked to him at the Combine, I asked him about a play against, I think it was UNC and Drake May, about what happened in the coverage in the end zone. And you said, hey, he sort of blamed the other guy.
Right.
And that got your attention. He had no one to blame on that pick six.
No, and it looked a little faster than 4.6 when he was running. Put a note to self, like Brian Branch. These guys do play faster on tape than maybe they'd, especially if there's a common theme at the safety position. Guys that are instinctive, guys that can make plays on the ball, guys that play faster. That makes a difference. I remember Harrison Smith didn't set the world on fire when we drafted him with a 40, but he's so smart, so instinctive, anticipates, jumps on throws, and plays a lot faster. And maybe that's a theme at the safety position. I mean, I think Newman's done a great job with the Giants, their second overall pick. He wasn't the speediest of guys, but he plays with anticipation.
Absolutely. And he had an edge to him. We spoke with him as well. Also guys that are having opportunities and taking advantage of them. Jordan Whittington out of Texas, who was, we talked about him in the preseason as Puka Nacua 2.0, just because Les Snead and Sean McVay plucked him out of not obscurity, but he wasn't a big target in that Texas offense, but he's got a lot of skills. And the Bo Limmer out of Arkansas has had to play because of some injuries on the interior offensive line, and he's held his own there too. So another pop for me in terms of the Rams draft. It is low-hanging fruit. But last year, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, they've Puka Nacua, they figured this thing out, it feels like. They've cracked the code, Rick.
Yeah, and again, last year they started out slow, then I think went on like a rage down the back end, got into the playoffs, and gave Detroit everything they wanted in that first playoff game when they had to go up to Detroit, end up getting beat. Yep. But then adding another draft class. This was a team that after they kind of pushed all their chips in to win a Super Bowl, which was worth it because they have a ring on their finger, knew they had to reset. They knew they had to reset from a cap and cash standpoint. And when you do that, you better be able to hit on their draft picks. And Les Snead has done a phenomenal job hitting on all these draft picks.
F those picks.
What was that, Debo?
F those picks.
Debo, the
F those picks.
like a robot, Rick. All right, give me a dropper, if you will, in terms of the draft class thus far. Things can turn around, but so far they haven't met expectations through 9 weeks.
They're actually leading the division, but I went with the Atlanta Falcons. So
bold choice.
I went, look, Michael Penix, who's a future pick, let's say, after Kirk Cousins is done. Aurora, as I'd like to call him, from Clemson.
Fair enough.
IR, second-round pick. Trice, third-round pick, IR. Dorless, the D-tackle out of Oregon, hasn't been active all season. J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame, the linebacker, been really good on special teams, but struggled when he got some snaps on defense. Casey Washington, special teams guy only. He's not helping in the passing game. And then Lagu, the D-tackle from Georgia, signed to Buffalo off Atlanta's practice squad in October. So they absolutely have nothing to show for this year's draft class as of yet.
I'm just laughing that you called Zion Lagu.
I've been here. It's been a long, long day.
Zion's minding his own business, listening with the first pick, and he hears Rick call him Lagu. I love that. That's fantastic. All right, I get it. I mean, I can't argue against that. There's you make a case there.
Michael Penix, he did complete one pass on a hitch route, so
we actually talked about it. Yeah, good throw.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go with a team that actually has a better record than the Falcons and are in second place in their division at 6-2, the Minnesota Vikings. And look, you talked about the injuries, of course, with the Falcons. J.J. McCarthy can't help that he got hurt. So he's out for the year. He wasn't going to play anyway, probably, unless we saw a real big hiccup from Sam Darnold. But he's not there. He's not able to get the reps as long as he's on IR. Is that right?
Yes, he's done for the year.
But can he can attend meetings and do all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Rehab, do meetings, attend practice. You just can't practice.
Okay. And then Dallas Turner, who I think he may have been your edge one. Mine was Jared first. And then, of course, Leatu Latu ended up going first overall. He hasn't, you were reading the snaps off to me the other day. He's only played 10 to 15 snaps a game.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on with him there. I thought he was going to make a big impact for them, but they got Grenard and Van Ginkel. Patrick Jones from Pitt, who I think we were able to draft him in the third or fourth round. I believe when we drafted him, he's having a major impact for him now. So hopefully Dallas Turner will come around and maybe make a bigger impact down the second half of the year.
And look, I would imagine Dallas Turner is going to be fine, but the point is he hasn't been as productive as some of these other rookies through the first 9 weeks. That's the point. He's a great player. Walter Rouse, the tackle at Oklahoma, transfer from Stanford, hasn't done a whole bunch. Will Reichert, who has actually been pretty good, but he just got hurt, so they had to sign another kicker. I can't get over the fact that he has that Lego hair, and that's real. Like, he looks like he's straight out of a children's book.
Yeah, I've known him for a couple years. Great kid. He was having a great year. I think first time he missed anything was this past Sunday night game.
Right.
He was, I think, having a great. So if you're saying the best thing you got so far is a kicker,
right?
I would agree with you that the kicker has been the most impactful rookie so far to date.
And then their 2 7th-round picks, Michael Juergens and Levi Drake Rodriguez. I don't think it played at all. Levi flashed some in the preseason. So it's just been tough sledding for them. But again, they're 6-2, and signs of cracking perhaps with Sam Darnold. He's got to tighten up some things. I don't want to say that anyone's figured out B-Flow the way he's playing. He's coordinated up that defense. But they've lost, I believe, 2 in a row now, right? So they've got to figure some things out.
Yeah, but they had a big win. Yeah, the big win this past Sunday night got them back on track after 2 losses. Yeah.
Who they beat? God, I'm so out of it. Do you remember who they beat? I'm going to look real quick. Oh, they beat the Colts. Right.
Yeah.
They got Joe Flacco and the Colts. Yep. They lost to the Lions and the Rams back-to-back weeks to beat the Colts and Joe Flacco, who
the Anthony
40 years old.
The Anthony Richardless Colts.
Nice. Well done. The Anthony Richardless Colts. All right. I think that's it. Anything else we need to hit on, Debo? I think we hit everything.
No, that wasn't like a good pun by Rick. I just want to point that out.
Well, he called Zion Lagoo, so I'm going to give him the Richard list. That's pretty good. I like that.
He takes off the Halloween costume and he forgets how to say things.
Yeah, I'll put it back on for the next podcast. I was much better at pronouncing names.
Yeah,
and plus,
you were
I'm
well spoken. You were nice.
Yeah,
I think you like it when you see the hair, like you see the hair that I have, and that makes you feel better about things. All right, I'm going to look into a toupee. That's a good call. All right, I'll look into that. All right, that's it. Wrap on episode 195. And a quick programming note, talked to you about this already, Rick. On Thursday, be back to normal, our regular with the first pick college QB rankings. And then next Tuesday, a week from today, Rick and I will roll out the with the first pick midseason all rookie team. Rick will do his, I'll do mine, and we'll compare. I'm sure Rick will have some things to say about mine. So look forward to that. In the meantime, thanks to my guy Rick. Thanks to Debo for producing. Thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. See you Thursday.